If you couldn't already tell from my Crimeless series, I love a good, nonsensical challenge. I often catch myself watching these stupid but very entertaining videos about all sorts of different games, from completing Super Mario Bros without touching a coin, to completing all Dark Souls games in a row without getting hit once. There's just something about limiting yourself by a strict set of rules that just breeds creativity. It really tests your problem solving ability. Consider this new series I'm doing as my own 2 cents into this huge market of video game challenges. If you couldn't already tell from the title, I'm planning to play through every single GTA 5 story mission without the use of the movement stick. So how the hell is this going to work exactly? Well, the rules are fairly simple. I am not allowed to use the left analog stick on my controller for any reasons. That's it really. Any other form of movement such as rolling, taking cover and driving are all allowed. In honour of this challenge, I've actually had the left movement stick removed on my backup controller, so there'll be absolutely no way I can accidentally move it. Even though I'm going into this blind, without any prior testing, I already know that this is going to be incredibly difficult, if not impossible on some missions, so if I ever find myself completely and utterly stuck, even after exhausting every other option, I'll allow myself to use the skip function, which takes you to the next available checkpoint. I'm going to try my absolute best not to resort to this, but I've got a feeling that we might not have any other choice at some point. I'll tally up all the skips I've used at the end of the video. Okay, with that out of the way, let's begin this ridiculous challenge. We start off with Prologue, the first introductory mission of the game. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this mission by now, so I won't explain the details of it. When we gain control of our character, all we have to do is take cover. This will take us straight to the door and will start the next cutscene. After that, we have to scare some civilians, and then remotely blow up the vault with our phone. From here, we have to utilise the combat roll to make it to our next objective. It's a bit slow, but after some time, we grab the money and slowly make our way out of the vault. After a close shave with a security guard, all that's left to do now is to make our way to the exit. We take cover from the exploding doors. Make our way. Oh wait, rolling no longer works. Maybe I can use cover to move myself? Nope, apparently not. After about 10 minutes of fiddling with different points of cover, it became quite clear that I wasn't going to get any closer to the door. Thus began the first of many resets. From experience, I know that there's a couple of different places you can take cover behind that still trigger the door exploding sequence. I attempted to get to one of them, but before I could even get close, my ability to roll got turned off for seemingly no reason, which once again softlocked me. After many attempts, I started to map out the exact areas that are causing me to no longer roll. As it turns out, it seems to happen more often near walls or boxes. From that, I managed to find a consistent path to the box I wanted to take cover behind, but at this point I've just moved the issue. I still can't roll my way to the door, so I once again kept switching between different points of cover until something worked. After some time, I was able to edge closer and closer to the door, until eventually I took cover just to the right of it. This is where disaster struck. I was completely unable to move. I couldn't come out of cover, I couldn't aim, I couldn't roll. I was completely stuck. No matter how many times I tried, I would always end up in this state. At this point, it really seemed impossible to progress. I thought about throwing in the towel and skipping to the next checkpoint, but then I realised that if I could somehow block the right side of the door with something, maybe it would let me take cover on the other side. Doing so would let me progress to the next checkpoint. At first, I tried the many fire extinguishers around the place, but they were too small to block the cover. Then I tried the chairs that can be found in the lobby, and they worked a lot better. They weren't perfect, but if put in the correct position, they would indeed block me from taking cover. But there's just one small issue. Because of the cover being blocked on the right side of the door, Trevor would decide to take cover on the left side instead, which softlocks me just like the right side. Okay, but we can easily fix this though, right? Just put 2 chairs on either side of the door. Simple. I guess it would be if you had infinite ammo to move the chairs with, but unfortunately we don't. After using up all of your ammo, the mission will fail. Okay, we can get around this. At the start of the mission, when playing as Michael, the game won't disable your ability to roll, no matter where you are. So before we enter the vault, we'll slowly push the chairs into position, and then go back to the vault to continue the mission normally. Simple, right? It would be if the explosion of the doors didn't despawn the chairs. Even after moving the chairs into an optimal position out of the door explosion radius, and then shooting them both in place, the game still wouldn't let me pass the door. This seems utterly hopeless. At this point, I whipped out my modded save and tried to tinker with every little object in the bank. Most of the things I messed with weren't helpful at all, but I did find out something interesting about this little box tucked away in the corner. It's classed as a dynamic prop, which means I should be able to move it. And sure enough, after shooting it a few times, it does ever so slightly move. This is where I had a eureka moment. If I could block both sides of the door, and then put this box through the door, I should be able to take cover on it, which would hopefully trigger the next part of the mission. Just to be sure, I used mods to manually place the chairs and box into the correct position, and as it turns out, it actually works. I hopped back on my other non-modded save, but I quickly found out that it just takes way too much ammo to move this box into position. In this clip, I've already used up all my ammo moving the box, and I'm still yet to put the chairs in place. In theory, this method does work, but in practice, it's just impossible to get these objects into these positions. I was back at square one and I was getting pretty desperate. I resorted to spamming all kinds of buttons just hoping that something would work. That's when I realised something. I could have sworn that I moved ever so slightly when spamming buttons. I went back on my modded save and got up the exact coordinates of my character. After messing around with the controls again, there it was. I had ever so slightly moved position. After about 15 minutes of messing about, I figured out what caused it. It's something to do with meleeing and aiming. If I aim to the right, melee, look to the left, and as soon as the melee animation ends, melee again, it would push me around 0.002 units backwards. Using the pixel measurement of one of the smallest things in the game, a cigarette, I calculated that each time you do this, you're moving 0.742mm. It may seem small, but this is huge. It will take me quite a long time, but using this, I could get past the door. I was doing this for around 30 minutes when another roadblock got in the way. Due to me getting close to the door, the game had disabled my ability to aim my gun, which means that the method I used to move will no longer work. We are literally so close but so far away. If only there was a way to somehow edge ever so slightly closer. That's it, I figured it out. If you melee in intervals of around once per second, your character should be moved backwards with a pace of 0.0001 unit. To show just how small this is, I'm going to move this cigarette that same amount of distance. Did you miss it? You likely did, as it only moved 3 pixels, which equates to 0.139mm. I can't explain just how slow this is, but with the discovery of this one thing, it turned this mission into impossible to feasible. I set up a macro to do this for me so I could suss out how long it would take, and I'm proud to say that with a total of 8,000 button presses and 3 hours of this, I was able to eventually get past this godforsaken door and progress to the next checkpoint. My excitement quickly faded as the realisation set in that I now had to do this with my own 2 hands. 3 long, boring hours, filled with the non-stop grunts of Trevor. This is going to be agony. Well, believe it or not, I did it. I did take a few breaks to rest my hand, but I did eventually do it. For some reason, it didn't take nearly as long as I predicted. It only took an hour or so to get past the door. Don't celebrate too early though, we're not done yet. We've still got to fight through the police. Luckily, my ability to roll came back, and in comparison to how slow we were going earlier, this feels stupidly quick. I was able to quite easily dispatch the police and make it to the getaway vehicle. We now have to drive away, which is quite hard to do when you haven't got the ability to steer. I learned to utilise the snow and other vehicles to slightly alter my direction. It's difficult, but eventually I was able to make it to this roadblock at the end of the road. I now had to somehow turn right. This part is essentially random. You need to hope that the police cars chasing you hit you in just the right way to turn you down this road. It's pretty unlikely, but you only need to get lucky once. Once it does happen, you're home free. After this cutscene plays out, all you have to do is kill a few cops, and then bam! The final cutscene plays and this mission is finally complete. So that's prologue fully completed without moving once. To be honest, I didn't think we'd get through this, but here we are. It took me an hour and 30 minutes to do this mission from start to finish. Although this video was pretty short, rest assured that there are longer and likely much more difficult missions coming up, meaning longer videos. Although this challenge has been pretty fun so far, I'm kinda dreading what's coming next. But that's a problem for future me. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of the No Move challenge and I'll see you later.